I'm John Stewart, President of the Florida Bar, and privileged to be here with a fellow esteemed lawyer and Commissioner of Agriculture for the state of Florida, Nikki Freed. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, can you tell our fellow lawyers, what was the journey that brought you to Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture?
I have a very unusual journey in even my legal career. I started off, I was going to University of Florida, so I got undergrad, master's in law degree. Never had intentions of practicing law. I always was involved in kind of politics of some sort at UF. And when I graduated, I had not clerked, I had not done anything with law firms because I was playing politics at the University of Florida. But Martha Barnett came up to me and said, "What are you doing with your life? What job?" And I said, "Actually, Martha, I don't know what I'm doing yet." She's like, "Oh, come on over to Holland & Knight." I got into Holland & Knight in Jacksonville. I was there for about a year and a half, but as we all know, when you're in big law firms, they want you to do a lot of billing and a lot of hours and being behind closed doors and then behind the computer, and that's just not me. That's not my personality, especially not having clerked or done any type of internships. So I then left and went to the public defender's office in Alachua County. So everybody always thought I was absolutely crazy to go from like the big law firm to the PD's office. Sometimes it goes the opposite way. So I was there for about 3.5 years and really was an opportunity for me to do good, to see firsthand the injustice of our criminal justice system and to really be a defender for the people. So I spent about 3.5 years there and then eventually made my way back to South Florida, which is where I was born and raised. And that was when the foreclosure crisis was happening. And I had a lot of family and friends that were involved in the real estate side of the law. And so they needed they actually were all transactional attorneys and they needed a litigator who was used to handling big caseloads. So I came in and took over a caseload of about 1,500. And about a year into that, I kind of woke up one day and I said, I've been practicing law for 8 years. I'm not getting the personal satisfaction that I wanted when I actually went to law school. But I always missed public policy. And so I scrubbed my resume, called all my friends that were now either elected in the legislature or friends that were lobbyists up here in Tallahassee. And I got very fortunate to be hired by a firm down in Fort Lauderdale. They gave me my first opportunity to come back up to Tallahassee and to really work on public policy. And so about 5 years into that, I was working on some really big issues like foster care kids and really the outreach for a lot of our foster care kids, as well as representing a lot of our school boards and for public education and for the expansion of medical marijuana in our state. And after 5 years of walking the halls here, I got frustrated with the process, I got frustrated with the system, realizing that unfortunately a lot of times when good legislation is trumped by not the right intentions. And so I decided that I wanted to run for office, and something that's always just kind of been in my blood. And I sat back and said, where is some place that I can really make the greatest amount of impact and make the biggest good for the citizens of our state? And looked at the Department of Agriculture. And not only did I didn't have an ag background, but because of my passion for medical marijuana and introduction of hemp here into the state, that kind of is where I saw the agriculture. But the other really cool part of our job is the consumer services. And that's where I got to now take my 15 years of practicing law and now get to be as an advocate for the consumer and get to do really just amazing things and work on statutes and rules and really use the law degree a lot when it comes to the consumer advocate aspect of the job. So that's how I got here. Unconventional to say the least, but so blessed every single day.
Yes, well, unconventional paths, that's what happens. But it's fascinating. You have a lot of varied experience with private practice and then with government practice. How would you say now that in your current position as commissioner, what's really a big difference between serving as commissioner as you do in this capacity as compared to when you were practicing law, whether it was private practice or government practice?
I think the greatest thing about being an elected official is that you actually can initiate change. We are a lot of times, and it's something as on the Young Lawyers Board of Governors, I was head of the government division side there, and I tried to explain to the rest of my peers why it was important to engage in politics, why it was important to engage in the legislature. They're the ones who write the laws that we now have to practice. And so being able to be on the other side and seeing where I can kind of come in and try to get rid of some bureaucratic red tape or try to kind of go through it and able to take my years of practicing law on both the public and private sector and be able to look at it from all perspectives. Look at it from, why were these laws put into place? How can I, as the regulator, make sure that I'm not creating undue burdens for our consumers or for our ag industry? And so it's an interesting perspective because I can get to now see exactly all the moving parts of our laws.
Right. So you mentioned the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar, and You may have been involved in other activities of the Florida Bar. I mean, how would you say that your involvement in the Florida Bar has, either helped shape your career or helped you, achieve all the successes you've achieved?
I've always said that my time on the YLD board was some of the best when it comes to professional activities. I mean, the relationships. I mean, even today I was telling you that the YLD, some of the board members were up here in Tallahassee, and it didn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. You all supported each other, and that was great. Being able to share, getting married or having kids, and all of it, and everybody going through kind of the same life journeys at that moment together. So that has been such an incredible experience, and the friends that I made on that board still last today. In fact, I actually showed at my last YLD meeting before I announced we hadn't even showed anybody else besides the internal team our announcement video, and I showed it to the YLD first. So that's been a tremendous, really a pivotal part of my career is those relationships and the professional development through there. I also served on the Legal Needs of Children committee, which again goes right into my passion for the foster care system. And one of the greatest legislations actually that I was able to pass and help pass was back in 2014. It was actually a bar initiative to get a right to counsel for all of our children in the foster care system. There had been a commission that had been established in the 90s, and from the commission they came out and said every child in the foster care system, the best way to really protect them and to move them through the system is to give them an attorney. And so while we weren't able to get full representation for everybody, we were able to foster through a bill that actually hangs in my office, signed, because of how proud I am of it. Every child that is in foster care that has special needs is now entitled to an attorney. And so, and because of that and my involvement in foster care, and because of my involvement in the Florida Bar, I was able to get all past presidents and people that were on this commission to come up and testify and give me the historical perspective. So really the involvement in the Florida Bar has really shaped so much of what I do up here.
Well, certainly we're very proud of you. That's great to hear. You mentioned relationships, with the Young Lawyers Division, building relationships. I know that you were kind enough to sit on a panel for us at the last annual meeting, which had quite a few very strong, very successful women lawyer leaders, judicial leaders. What would be the advice you would give to young women lawyers who are coming into the profession about how to keep moving forward and improving their careers and becoming more involved as leaders?
I think it's a couple things. We saw it's such an incredible panel. I know that you sat through it, and Michelle was so instrumental in obviously putting that together. And you saw total changes in generations. You saw the first female president of the Florida Bar was on our panel, to some of our judges and state attorneys and myself, and just the generations, and seeing kind of how far we've come in the legal profession on really the life work balance. And I think that women in a lot of ways always believe that they have to do it all right now, and that unfortunately they get burnt out and they no longer have the same zeal and same zest. And so you saw for a long time a lot of women, once they started having families, no longer practicing. And what has been great is that you've seen a change in, I think, the legal profession, that there are ways to start balancing that. And I think that's really important for young women to understand, is they don't have to do it all, and to ask questions to their law firm before they go in there. What are the maternity leaves? What are child care support systems? Where is the closest daycare centers to wherever you might be working? And so those conversations may have been shunned upon years ago. It's something that is an active part of the firm culture now. And I think that for women, it's to stand up for those issues, because if you don't create that life work balance, you're not happy in your professional life, you're not happy in your personal life, and you both need to really gel in order for you to be successful. And ask for mentors.
I think we're very proud. We worked really hard, the Florida Bar, Florida Association of Women Lawyers, a collection of groups and individuals to have the parental leave rule passed that the Florida Supreme Court recently passed, which I think was great. And you mentioned mentors, and mentoring is something that we think is critically important. And so, sort of flip to the last question I asked you, what would you say to seasoned attorneys in terms of giving back to the younger generation and becoming mentors to the newer attorneys that are entering our profession?
They have to. They were the trailblazers, for so many of us, and it's not. They then have an additional responsibility that we are so appreciative of them blazing the trails for us, and to make sure that we have more women partners and heads of law firms, and more women judges, and more women state attorneys and state public defenders. So you're seeing a lot of that. But it's just equally important now to mentor the younger and younger generation that's coming up. And then maybe, again, different obstacles, but they were able to see it firsthand. And some of the advice that I got from some of the older, attorneys in the firms over the years, really helped to kind of put things in perspective and to give you ideas of, okay, well, you need to make sure. I will never forget, I was sitting down at my first job, didn't understand billables and how everybody competed against each other behind closed doors, and you got to see where everybody's billables were. Another reason why I left that. But understanding that is the competitive nature, and being able to really appreciate that, was taught to me by an older female attorney in the firm that had already been a partner, and saying, look, this is something that you just need to be conscious of, that this happens. But it's up to the older attorneys, and both men and women. You don't have to necessarily have a female mentor to be your, you could easily, men are great mentors too. They've seen it. They all have wives. They all have, some of them have daughters, and they would probably appreciate being able to mentor as well.
Yeah, I think you hit on a point there. I think it's important that sometimes the voice in the room has to be the voice that isn't feeling that they're being maybe biased or discriminated against, and so men need to make sure they're strong mentors for women in our profession. I think that's a really good point. Really appreciate your time. We're very happy to have you as a Florida lawyer. Congratulations on your election as commissioner, and all the best to you.
Thank you. And I just want to add one thing. It's kind of interesting, which most people don't know, is this is the first time, I think, in history, I'm almost positive, that you have 3 of 4 of the members of the Florida cabinet all attorneys. So which makes it even more interesting that we have also the clemency board, that you've got myself as a past public defender, you've got the governor who is a past JAG attorney, and you've got obviously A.G. Moody, who is a past judge, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office. So you have, for the first time, a really unique opportunity, because you've got 3 individuals who have actually been in the criminal justice system to some capacity. And it's kind of interesting to see how kind of we play off each other in clemency.
Quite a few strong women lawyer leaders are running the state right now. So yes. I think it's another dynamic change that the state is ready for.
Yes, absolutely. Between myself, A.G. Moody, and obviously Secretary of State Laura Lee, we all actually all went to UF together. So we've all known each other since back in undergrad. So we all say, the women of the University of Florida are taking over the state.
And at least 2 of the 3 of you were on the Young Lawyers Division Board of Governors, so maybe there's something in the water there too.
That too.
Well, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.